Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in this tutorial, we're going to install and set up Cypress and run our first test. So let's get to it. To set up Cypress, I'm going to open up my terminal. So I'm going to be using Mac for this tutorial, but if you're using Windows or Linux, the instructions should be same. So here's my Mac. I have kind of zoomed in or made the fonts bigger. I hope you can see it properly. So here are the installation prerequisites: Node.js, npm, and your favorite IDE. So we really don't need to install npm. It comes with bundle with Node.js. I just wanted to mention it that we'll need it, and I'm going to kind of go over explaining what is npm and so on. And I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, so you can use other IDE of your choice, but I think it'll be easier if you follow along with Visual Studio Code. The first thing I'm going to do is check my Node version, Node -- version, right? Enter. It says that I have 16 version 16, right, which is good. So if you don't have Node, right, so let's open up my browser. Let's go to download Node.js, right, and click on this link. This is their official site, so choose your platform and then install, and you should be good to go. So I'm gonna go back to my terminal. So we're back here. When you're done, you can follow along here. So for IDE, as I mentioned, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. It has excellent support for JavaScript, and it's really absolutely my favorite. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a folder, right, in my computer, so on my Mac. So we need a folder where we can put our tests, right? So all our tests will be in this folder. So what I'm going to do, so you can do pwd to check where you at. So I'm in my main directory. I want to save it in my documents. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to go to my documents, and then right here I'm on my documents. Then I'm going to create a folder mkdir space app coders test. Then I want to go to that directory, right? cd app coders tests, enter. So I have my folder, right? So I'm in this app coders test folder. So yours could be in a different location. If you want to keep it in desktop or any other place, that's fine. So now next, what we need to do, basically we need to go back to our IDE, Visual Studio Code, and then open the folder from there. So we want to open the folder from Visual Studio Code, right? So there's a shortcut here. You can just type code dash dot. It should open up Visual Studio Code, but I'm going to basically manually open up in case any of you have issues. So I'm in my IDE right now. I made it a bit larger so it'll be easy for you guys to see. Hopefully you guys can see it. So if I look at my folder here, basically there's nothing here, right? It's empty, app coders test. So I already opened my terminal. If you do not have it open, there's a shortcut. Basically you can click on control and then keyboard shortcut, like the backtick character. Basically it's below the escape tab or button on your keyboard, right below it, right? Or you can just click here, terminal and new terminal. So it should pop up this terminal. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a file called package.json. So there are multiple ways you can do it. The easiest way is, right, if you hover over here, there's a file here. So I'm going to say package.json. Press enter. That should land you to that file. So the next thing we need to do is to initialize the folder to be ready for npm commands. So to do that, I'm going to come back to my terminal and say npm init space -y and press enter. So if you're running this first time, it should be pretty quick, and voila. What it did, it actually created our package.json file. What is npm and why we need it? So npm is JavaScript package manager, npm comes built in with JavaScript, so you don't have to install it separately. It has many thousands of packages in it available for installations. So it's similar to like Maven in Java, right? It's a package manager. We will be using npm to install Cypress. This is just another package inside the npm repository. Now the question is why we need package.json. npm need to identify, better word would be register the fact that Cypress is installed in our system or in the test folder, and it does it inside the package.json file. If we want to understand it further, the package.json file contains descriptive and functional metadata about a project, such as a name, version, and dependencies. The file provides the npm package manager with various information to help identify the project and handle dependencies. This is why we need the package.json file. When we run npm install Cypress, it will be local, meaning it will install it inside the folder we just created. So this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to clear my screen. Only command we need to install Cypress is npm install Cypress, right? This will do the job. Additionally, if you want to, you can specify a version. Let's say Cypress at version 10, 12, whatever version you want. Sometime, the team, they do it because they want to sync with other team members. They don't want unnecessary errors and so on. Different versions might cause newer versions, sometimes not really stable. So that's another way of controlling that. The another thing you can do actually, if you want to specifically dabs, npm install Cypress, then you can actually do save -dab. You will do that if you want to do it as a dab dependency, right? So for our scenario, I'm going to take it out and just do npm install Cypress. Press enter. It might take few seconds to few minutes if you're doing it first time. There are multiple ways of downloading Cypress, but npm is the safest way. And we'll stick to it. For now, we'll just keep it simple. So it's taking a bit longer on my end, so I'm going to basically pause the video and come back when the installation is done. Alright, so my installation is done, so I'm going to clear the screen again. So let's run Cypress. We don't have anything yet, but this will create necessary folders we need. To run Cypress, we need a command called npx. So npx cypress open. That will do. Npx cypress open, press enter. For you, it might look different, depend on when you're installing. So what we need is end-to-end testing. So when you see this, click on end-to-end testing. I'm going to click on continue. And I'm going to stick with Chrome for now. So start end-to-end testing in Chrome. So if we look at here, we are in our test right here. We have this tab called specs, right? We can do two ways. We can create our own spec, and then we can go with some examples. So here are some example specs they have given us. I'm going to delete them because it could be confusing when we have our actual spec, our test. Sometimes it's difficult to follow along and try to find the spec we need. But this is a good start if you want to look at some of the examples they have created. So for now, I'm going to go back to our Visual Studio Code. So if you look here, we have this folder called Cypress, right? I'm going to close this JSON, and we have this folder called Cypress. Then inside Cypress we have another folder called end-to-end, and here you see that all the examples we saw in the browser. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually delete it from here. So we don't have anything in our end-to-end folder, right? So this end-to-end folder used to be called integration folder, but they recently changed it to end-to-end. So this is where we are going to write our test, and all our test is going to be here inside this folder. So now we are ready to write our first test, right? So one thing we need to do before we do that, we need to basically look into the application under test, right? So what I'm going to do here, open up my browser again. We are going to test this application. So appcoders.com. So this is a pretty simple site. It has some functionalities we can test. There's a pop-up here, there's a messaging option, there are few buttons or tabs we can click, and there's a form we can also look into future. And close this guy here, close this. So this is the application under test, right? So we're going to just automate some actions for this application. So I'm going to minimize this, go back to our end-to-end test folder. The first thing we're going to do, click here, and then we're going to create a new file, right? You can do it from here, or you can just simply right click and new file, either way. So what we need to do is give it a name, right? So I'm going to say appcoders.cy.js. So this is the convention. So .cy.js we have to have. So this is the convention we have to follow, right? And here we have our first test. So in order to run our test, right, we need a test runner to write our test. Mocha is the built-in test runner for Cypress. It comes with it, so we don't have to do anything. It's already installed. So we're ready to write our first test. To write a test in Cypress, we need to write it inside the it function. So it parentheses quotation should navigate to the home page. Okay, comma here, open and closing parentheses, space equal to right arrow. So basically this is a callback function. I'm going to go over this later. And then have my open and closing curly braces, press enter. So I'm ready to write my first test. Before I write my test, what I want to do actually, I want to set up autocomplete. So when I type something, it will autocomplete for me, so I don't have to do all the tedious work. Also, when I hover over certain libraries and documentation, it's going to give us all the references, right? So to do that, this is how we do it. Reference types equal to quotation Cypress slash, so typo here. So then save it, Command S, Control S, always save your work. We can also set up autocomplete in the IDE, but for right now I'm going to keep it simple. So now we're ready to go. So what I'm going to do here, type ci.visit, enter. Then we're going to give the URL where we want to go, right? Parentheses https appcoders.com, right? And I missed the quotation here, so we need to add that. So end of it, Control S, Command S, save it. So what it should do basically when we run this command, we're telling it to just go to this page, right? Navigate to the page. Not doing a whole lot of testing yet, but it's a good start. Let's run it using npx cypress open, npx cypress open, enter. Minimize the window here so it fits the screen. So we have our app coders. The reason I deleted the example because otherwise it would have been difficult to find. I had to look for them. So I'm going to click on appcoders.ci.js. So it's basically running our test right now. Look at this. This is really cool. So it went to the site. On the right side you can see that the website, the URL we gave, and the left side is actually showing us the actions, what it's doing. So our test passed. Wow, awesome, really cool, we did it. So now that we ran our first test, right, it doesn't have any validations to it yet. It's really not a useful test yet. So I'm gonna go back to my Visual Studio Code. So the it function here, the it function accepts two parameters, right? The first one is this part right here, the name of the test as a string, and a function with the test code. So basically this is here, right? We can also write it like this instead of the callback function. If I want to, I can actually write it like function, right? This is the same thing. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to go back, going to use the callback function here like this instead of the function. It's the same thing, but I think this is much cleaner. Second part is that the test is using a sci method, right here. So it is using sci method to visit the site. It is a built-in method in Cypress. So as our test grows, we're not going to write our test inside the int function. We're actually going to use another function called describe function, and then within the describe function we'll have our int function and all the individual tests. So it'll be easy to manage and so on. Alright, so that's it for this video. As I said before, this test is not doing much, it's just going to the site, but here I want to keep it really simple. I just don't want to make this any longer. So what we'll do in next video, we're going to add a describe function, then within the describe function we'll arrange it, and then what we'll do, we'll basically add some validations, right? Without really validations, this test is not valid, but I think for our purpose it worked. We were able to successfully install and set up Cypress and then basically navigate to our application under test. So I think this is a good start. If you run into any issue, let me know. I'll try to help out, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video and hit the bell icon for future notifications, and see you in the next video. Happy testing.